This day is a very confusing day. When we try to look up the sources that tell us what this day is all about, we're left even more confused. So let's start from the beginning. The Gemara says that Lag BaOmer is nothing, because the Gemara doesn't mention Lag BaOmer. So where is Lag BaOmer mentioned? So it's not until much later that we become exposed to a concept, a custom to go to the gravesite of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and celebrate on this day, the 33rd day of the Omer. This is in the time of the Rishonim. Discuss this minhag. Later on, we find in the time of the Arizal, which is simultaneously when the Bet Yosef, Rav Yosef Cairo, was in Tsfat, that he went through tremendous efforts to bring himself and his entire family to Meron to celebrate on Lag BaOmer. We find years later, after he moved to Israel, that he went again to celebrate at Meron for Lag BaOmer. His student, Rav Chaim Vital, actually writes the uniqueness and specialty of this day and even explains some ideas from Kabbalah to help us appreciate it. So what does Rav Chaim Vital explain? Rav Chaim Vital explains that this 33rd day of the Omer is a very special day because it's the day that the Jewish people, the students of Rabbi Akiva, stopped dying. And that's what seemingly on the surface is cause for celebration. This idea has a bit of a source, remes to it in the Midrash that talks about pros. The Lashon pros means a part of. And when the Gemara says that the students of Rabbi Akiva died between Pesach and Shavuot, so the Lashon there is pros, which teaches us that it's only a part of that time period. And so then there's a discussion, was it the first part, the second part? When exactly did they stop dying? Is it the 33rd? Is it the 34th? Well, the Ari, according to the Ari, it's actually the 33rd is a day that no one died, and therefore it's a day that there's some type of celebration. This point itself is very confusing because why should we celebrate merely because Jewish people stopped dying? 24,000 students already died. There were no students left to die, so we don't really call that any type of miracle or salvation. It's because they stopped dying because there were no more students left. So then, why do we celebrate? So it's not very clear to many. So what Rav Chaim Vital says there is that the reason we celebrate is in fact because today's the day, Lag BaOmer, that Rabbi Akiva went and found 5 new students. 5 students, one of them being Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and gave them Smicha, and of course also began teaching them. And it is through these 5 special students, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yehuda, and one more, which I should actually have remembered. Anyway, these 5 students that are the source of all of the Torah Shabbat Peh that we have today. Estam Mishnah, Rabbi Meir, and so on. Now, with this, we can now begin to appreciate what is the nature of making this day a happy day. It's the day that the Torah, Shabbat Peh, which really represents the entire Torah, because without it we have no Torah, gets its kiyum. Meaning, we are looking at a very desperate moment. After the death of 24,000 students, which were eventually going to become the rabbis of the Jewish people, when they passed away, the question was, who is going to bring the Torah to the next generation? With no one around, this was a moment where the Torah, in some sense, was like weighing in the balance. But through the 5 new students, the Torah has its mouth, has its rabbis to teach to the next generation. So on some level, this is like a continued idea of being Mekayem the Torah. We received the Torah at Har Sinai, but at this moment, it was in jeopardy of being lost on some level, and therefore, coming with the new 5 students, we have a salvation, and that is reason to celebrate. This is what is explained from the Arizal. It's the Smicha given to Rabbi Shimon and the other students. Interesting to point out, Api Kabbalah, he does also explain that the idea of the days of Sirah being days of judgment, so there's a transition in these days of judgment. The beginning of the days of Sirah are harsh judgment, and that is why the students of Rabbi Akiva died during these days of harsh judgment, because they had a flaw. On their high level of holiness, they had a flaw, and the judgment came at that particular time harsh, and they were held accountable. But on Lag BaOmer, there's a shift, and an increase of mercy, of rachamim, and a sweetening of the din. And that's why the students that Rabbi Akiva took at this point lasted. So the day itself also intrinsically has a day of mercy included within it, which is another reason why we celebrate on this day. So now, with this in mind, let us now address the idea of the entire world for generations calling this day the day that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passed away. Where does this idea come from? So this is really what's not so clear. When we talk about a Yom of a Hilulah, a day of celebration, so many interpret the idea of a Hilulah being connected with the Yahrzeit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. In fact, the Arizal himself never mentions it being a Yahrzeit. He mentions it's the day of the joy, the Simcha of Rashbi. Now, if you look at the word Simcha, if you take away the Chet, then it's Yom Shemet. So in the language of the Arizal, it says Yom Simchat Rashbi. When you take away the Chet, it's Yom Shemet Rashbi. This is what's found in the pre-Eitz Chaim that circulated certainly in the European areas, which is where this concept came up. And therefore, many of the great Chassidic masters in their discussions discuss this being the Yahrzeit. Now, what bothers me, and I'm sure bothers many, is how can all these great rabbis that had deep levels of understanding and even a level of Ruach HaKodesh, how could they all write something that is wrong? So perhaps we can say that they're not wrong. And this is what some of the rabbis discuss. Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, the Kaf HaChaim brings it. What we could actually say is that included in this celebration is that it is also the day that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passed away, of course, many, many years later. So the question is, why doesn't the Arizal mention it as the day he passed away? So perhaps one way to resolve this problem is this. The minhag, the custom to go to the kever of Rashbi, existed before the Arizal. There were many years that this was taking place. The Arizal also just participated in the minhag. Now, as a great Kabbalist, he gave it his support, which is what helped make it what it is today, that millions and millions of people around the world celebrate, and that over 500,000 people go to the kever of the Rashbi, usually, of course, unfortunately this year not. So it's because of his stamp is how come the day became so popular and so great today. But let's imagine in his time and place, we said that he went and troubled himself to a great deal to bring his entire family with him in those days from Egypt to Israel to celebrate at Lag BaOmer by the kever of the Rashbi. Why would he do such a thing? Even after he moved to Tsfat and became the great leader of the Kabbalist circle, he still also went from Tsfat to Meron, which is again a big tircha. To travel in those days, it was very difficult. And he went and spent the entire day there celebrating. From all this, we see that there's a very special power and a very great significance in this day. But what is the nature of this significance? So we've already said, based on the Ari, that it's the day that the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva got Smicha, one of them being Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and it's the day of the Kiyum of Torah, and the old Torah is continued through Rabbi Akiva and his students. But we still are left with a few questions. Why is it today known as the uniquely just Rabbi Shimon's day? What about all of the other 4 students and Rabbi Akiva himself? It's a day of 6 great rabbis have a connection to. So why do we only go to Rabbi Shimon's kever, and why do we call it Rabbi Shimon's day? So to answer this question, I would like to suggest this. Even the Ari himself, and of course the people that came even the years before the Ari, when they traveled to the kever of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, so what was that connected with? It was connected spiritually with these concepts we mentioned already. But simply speaking, the reason why we go to the gravesite of somebody is because that's where he died. And the day we normally go to a gravesite of somebody is the day he died. So the minhag to specifically go to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's kever is because that's the same day that he died later on. And that's why everyone went to his gravesite. Now, because he was such a great tzaddik and revealed Kabbalah to the world, and because it was the day that the Torah was given its kiyum, that the Torah was saved on some level, it became intrinsically a day of celebration. So when he dies later on that same day, he died on the great day of celebration, and so it also continues to be a day of celebration. Not to mention that because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai reached such a high level of revealing the Torah of Kabbalah in his time, so he rose above in stature from that respect to all of the other rabbis. He is like the first Chassidic Rebbe, the first Kabbalist to reveal Torah. So he became, in some sense, the Rebbe of the Rebbes. And we see that his words in the Zohar are much more authoritative than anyone else's. And even his own words in the Gemara don't have the same authority as his words in the Zohar. So as being the first rabbi to have been given permission to reveal secrets in his time, he reached a level that really transcended all of the levels of the rabbis before him. An important point to mention is, don't think that he was the greatest rabbi ever. He was certainly great, and we're not here to diminish any of his greatness. But the Ari himself says in another place that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was great, but Rabbi Akiva, his Rebbe, was also great, maybe even greater. It's just that permission was given to Rabbi Shimon to reveal secrets that were not given to Rabbi Akiva to reveal. He was also given permission to have it recorded in some way through his student. So he came at a particular time that it was ready, the world was ready, and Hashem granted permission for secrets of Kabbalah to be written down in the Zohar. But Rabbi Akiva was also a great Kabbalist, maybe perhaps even greater than Rabbi Shimon, just it wasn't the time for him to reveal it. We see the same pattern continuing. The Arizal came in a particular generation in the 1500s. We call him an Acharon. We normally look at an Acharon as incomparable to Rishonim, certainly not Amoraim, and we wouldn't even consider to compare an Acharon to a Tana, a rabbi of the time period of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Akiva. But we find in the writings of the Ari and in his stories, the level of his greatness is unbelievable. It's impossible to understand and comprehend the level of his greatness. So the question is, how did such a great rabbi come in the 1500s? So we see, because first of all, of course, he had a great neshama, but also Hashem had mercy on the Jewish people and decided that at that time and place, again, Hashem had rachmanut and allowed a revelation of Kabbalah that really supersedes the revelations before. There are ideas that the Arizal explains clearly in his books that today, to be a Kabbalist, you must learn the writings of the Ari. Without learning the writings of the Ari, there's no such thing as being called a Mekubal. Before him, of course, there was no such thing as the writings of the Ari. He received from Eliyahu Navi new secrets that were not revealed until his time, because of the great chesed of Hashem to have them revealed at that time. And this is the way things go in Torah. There is a time for certain revelations. We now are standing, Bezrat Hashem, close to the coming of Mashiach. So too, in this time period that we're living in now, and we hope to see soon, the revelation of Mashiach, and will bring also new insights, a new revelation, a new understanding of Torah. The Kabbalists explain that in the time of Mashiach, there'll be almost like a new Torah revealed. And the pshat, the simple understanding of that Torah, will be equal to the secrets of our Torah today. We are all going to become, Bezrat Hashem, big, wise people of Torah, knowing all of the deep secrets of Hashem's Torah. It's ours. It's our chelek. Hashem wants to give it to us. It just had to take time, many years of working on ourselves and fixing ourselves in the world to be ready, a vessel to receive these beautiful, deep secrets of Torah. And the more we work, the more we're ready. And after almost 6,000 years, Bezrat Hashem, we are very ready for these secrets to be revealed to us. May we merit speedily in our days the coming of Mashiach and a revelation of the secrets of Torah as we've never experienced them before. As it says, Torah chadasha mipihu. We're going to have a new Torah come in the time of Mashiach. Bezrat Hashem, may happen speedily in our days.